Hey guys, Liana here. Special unscheduled video this week because I finally got off my butt, stopped playing video games, went to a movie, and saw Mad Max Fury Road. Now, part of the delay for this is that I really didn't have anybody to go see this movie with. I like summer splody action movies. That was Momo trying to make a splody noise. Yes, Momo. Um, and I prefer my summer movies, just getting my bias off the top. I prefer that they not try to make a point because I think the more a dumb summer movie tries to make a point, the less well it actually makes that point because the purpose of summer movies is to be dumb, stupid entertainment that's a visual spectacle and just take people away from having to think hard and having to be like, good human beings and just engage in a little wish fulfillment, engage in a little escapism. I actually think that's healthy. And so when a film starts putting in, a charming family subplot the way Jurassic World did, it irritates me because then I get this dissonance from, oh, look, they're trying to make a point about, valuing your family and putting what's important over work. And then they have Bryce Dallas Howard outrunning a Tyrannosaurus Rex in high-heeled shoes and a skirt. If you want me to suspend disbelief, just let me suspend disbelief. And what I liked about Mad Max is that it's just a 2-hour car chase. It doesn't attempt to be anything but it's dumb. It is so dumb. And I was pleasantly surprised by this because I went into this being aware of this massive culture war that exploded over whether or not the film was feminist. And it actually delayed my seeing the film because I go to dumb summer movies to get away from that, and I go with my husband, and I have to be considerate of him. He doesn't need me coming out of movies going all the time because I expected one thing and got another. And usually when someone says a film is feminist or a film is feminist propaganda, I always come out of it going, what you on about? And that's exactly what I came out of Mad Max Fury Road thinking, but it was a good thing. I give George Miller credit for hiring Eve Ensler, who is the writer of the Vagina Monologues, to consult on one small portion of the film. And I give George Miller credit for considering himself a feminist and saying making this movie made him feel like it was impossible to not be a feminist. Good for him. If he wants to give that affirming message, good for him if that's what he believes. Now, do I think Mad Max Fury Road is a feminist movie? No, I don't think that. And it doesn't have to be. But we ended up with headlines like, where is it? It's like, I can't find it. Is this it? Yeah. Fury rode a Trojan horse to dupe guys into watching feminist propaganda. How are cars blowing up and a dude in red long johns playing a guitar on a flatbed on fire like a marionette? How is that feminist propaganda? You're like, what? And then sexists are scared of Mad Max because it is a call to dismantle patriarchies. No, it's not. It's not. And then, of course, there's, what's this? I didn't set this up. This is just the proof that it's consulting with Eve Ensler. But then this one, 10 reasons it isn't actually feminist. And I pulled this one up because this was the moment this was the thing out of all the incredibly stupid things that happened in this movie. The fact that these women are clearly wearing lipstick and were out in the desert for days without a sunburn was the thing that bothered me the most. And it's just because that was my issue with, I forget what, Metal Gear. That's the word I'm looking for. The first time I saw Quiet, it wasn't, oh, she's so scantily clad, that's sexist. It's like, oh my God, that pale girl out in the desert, where is her sunscreen? That's where I go. But here's the thing, guys. All this sound and fury, I mean, are there feminist elements to Mad Max? There always have been, is the thing. Going back to, Tina Turner in the original 80s films, they were showing the women, the super women of the 80s in that way. But the thing where it's feminist propaganda or it's a feminist film falters in terms of Mad Max, and what follows is not a criticism. I don't think Mad Max Fury Road has to be a feminist film. And I want summer filmmakers to just tell their stories. I like the balance this one struck in that, do I think it was a feminist film? No, I don't. Do I think it needed to be? No. Am I glad it wasn't? Yeah, I'm glad. I would prefer that films have feminist considerations and feminist influences and feminist elements without being a purely feminist film. I think those are important because it shows that, equality for women is mainstreaming, and that's very important. That shows, our work is working. As, I want you to see Eve Ensler's comments because she was the consultant, and I want you to see exactly what she consulted on because it's a relatively small piece of the film. He wanted me to work particularly with the actors who played the 5 wives because I've spent a lot of time in places like Bosnia, Haiti, Afghanistan, and Congo. He wanted me to give them context about what happens with women who are trafficked and enslaved and raped. There's been debate over whether it is a feminist film. People sometimes don't know what feminism means. To me, feminism is not that complex. It means women are equal. We have equal roles, equal rights, equal pay. If you look at this film from an objective point of view, women are equally capable of fighting. Women have equal desires. Women are independent and have agency over their own lives. They exist without men. That's unfortunately not always true, but I'll save that. To me, what was very exciting about this film was the range of women characters and the range of ages. Yes, they weren't relegated to one role. Yes, to me, that's feminism. Yes, exactly. And this is why I think it's great George Miller brought Eve Ensler on board for little things like that. And they're little things in the grand scheme of things. Now, people have complained that, all the actresses who played the wives were white, save one half actress. And that's true. I believe that's Lisa Bonet's daughter. But, yes, they're mostly white. Yes, they mostly look like models. Yes, apparently hair dye is still available in the apocalypse where there's water shortages. This is the point where I'm like, there was a dude strung up like a marionette who was blind playing a guitar on a flatbed truck. I don't think about these things. But the fact that all these people thought very hard about this made me want to make this video, even though the movie's been out for a while. And like I said, I'm glad I waited because now people have had time to see it. So any plot spoilers I talk about here, you've already had the opportunity to see the movie. But if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't seen them, stop listening now because I am going to talk about some things that may or may not be spoilery in your opinion. The reason Mad Max Fury Road is at its core not a modern feminist movie. It may very well be a feminist movie by the standards of the 1980s in a second wave concept. Because, in fact, the movie makes the assumption that when it all goes to shit, the most powerful man in this case, is going to be a disgusting, raping white guy. And third wave feminism, one of the good things about third wave feminism that a lot of people don't talk about is the sex positive elements of third wave feminism are saying, no, we shouldn't assume that men will just become rapists if they're allowed to be. And this is one of the big ways that second and third wave diverge And it's diverged because of the work of the second wave feminists, educating and sensitizing people to, the various rape myths that we're all inundated by. And the idea that any man is a potential rapist is a rape myth. The idea that, rape is a fate worse than death is a rape myth. And the fact that everybody is spending all this time talking about how horrible it was that women were milked for breast milk and used as birthing machines. Well, the dystopia of Mad Max is also a shining example of disposable male syndrome. These cancer-ridden boys are convinced that they're going to go to Valhalla if they sacrifice themselves for a warlord. So, to single out the suffering of women and not look at, well, men get it pretty shitty too, but it's okay because they're not raped, well, that tells us the unique terror that our society places on rape, and that's why it's an effective intimidation tactic, and that's why it's used as a weapon of war. Now, I think if we stop going, the worst thing you can do to a woman is rape her, well, then it stops being quite so scary a threat, doesn't it? Now, I'm not saying it's not a terrible thing, but where there's life, there's hope. And talk to people who have dealt with these horrible war-torn countries like the ones I mentioned before. There's very interesting interviews being done with Holocaust survivors who were raped. And their comment is, I don't complain about being sexually assaulted. I'm alive. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. Because, we make this whole thing about rapes and rape cultures, uniquely horrifying for women, and we do have to stop it. I mean, killing someone and humiliating them are completely different things. But if you look at Max, what struck me about Mad Max is that Max, as a protagonist, was just as dehumanized as the women were. Like, they had that in common, and that to me was why they managed to work together, is that he sort of understood from his sort of mostly crazy animalistic perspective. He knew what it was like to be treated as property. He knew what it was like to have no autonomy, because for those of you who don't know, again, I said there was going to be spoilers, Max is a universal blood donor. So he's basically kept in a cage and used to top up the what are they called, war pups or whatever. I gave up on knowing anybody's names. I started confusing them with Rocky Horror Picture Show characters. So I started calling the main bad guy Frankenfurter, and stuff like that. It didn't matter. None of it really mattered. But the idea that, you're stringing this guy up and using him for blood because there's water shortages, but you have to give your prisoners food and water. So that's a really inefficient way of, sustaining your warriors. This is why I'm saying we shouldn't think about this too hard, but people did. And that's why I'm going down that road. And so this is very interesting that, like I said, continuing in the tradition of the Mad Max movies from the 1980s is totally consistent. I liked the fact that this does seem to be, the same world that the Thunderdome came from. I think they spent too much time on making it seem just horribly awful. And, the villain was just, let's every bad thing we can think of about a villain and make him that. But then they make him physically feeble and don't really get into how he managed to maintain power when people are so miserable. And, he's holding power basically because there's an elevator that people can't operate to swarm his fortress. Basically, the idea is you're supposed to believe that this one gross dude controls all the water in about 200 kilometers. He used kilometers. And so everybody has to do what he tells them, which is kind of a flimsy device. But like I said, we don't think about what I've termed for this movie is car explosions they're cars and explosions. Anything more than that is art style. Like, you don't think about it too hard because, then you start thinking about the fact that they have to throw so much more at these female characters to even remotely be interesting. You read too much into lines like the old lady biker chicks going, one man, one bullet. I didn't take that line as a feminist pronouncement because they'd had a scene earlier that talked about the fact that ammo was scarce and you had to be crack shots because you ran out. It was in limited supply. I just took that to be, we're awesome shots. Here it goes. There's this big bunch of enemies, but we can take them because we only need one bullet per man. And people saw that as some feminist, the equivalent of a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle statement. I didn't take that at all because you know what? I was too busy laughing at the guy in the guitar with the red long johns. Like, there is a dude in long underwear playing a guitar and you want to be smarty smart university degree about this movie. What? And again, I don't mind a movie being stupid. Overall, I'm glad I saw Jurassic Park 2, even though it was, Jurassic World. I always get it wrong. See, I don't care enough to get the name right. The movie was stupid. I wish Bryce Dallas Howard hadn't been running in high heels because of the fact that they actually, Chris, what's his name? Pratt? Yeah. See, I don't care. Star-Lord. Star-Lord without the mask and a weird dinosaur fetish says, at one point, you won't get very far in those shoes, and then she outruns a T-Rex. That's dumb. Don't do that. Do like what Mad Max does. We're just going to start a car chase. And we're going to just have car chases for 2 hours. We are not expecting this to be smart. We are making a fun movie. We did our due diligence so that women can enjoy this movie as much as men can, which I think is important because women are half the movie-going audience, right? And if you want to make money, some demographic studies have shown that women make the decisions about what movies people see. So it's one thing for a woman to not think it's their favoriteest thing in the whole world, but we know now that things like Shirtless Thor get women into theaters so men can see Hulk punching things. Why not make that compromise? I think that's a great compromise, right? And whether Mad Max was the star of this film or not, I personally think he was. It's his complete story from beginning to end. The fact that Charlize Theron became so dominant in the film, I believe has more to do with her presence as an actor on screen than it really does to the way the movie was written. She was disposable. He wasn't, right? They're not calling this Apocalypse or Fury Road a Mad Max story. It's Mad Max. And the thing I thought was interesting is that he really was the hero of the whole thing, and he didn't say very much. I think it's cool that they made a movie with a severely mentally ill main character. That was pretty good. But this whole feminism, anti-feminism culture war, guys, it's gotten ridiculous. This is a dumb summer movie that the director said, how can you not be a feminist after watching it? Awesome. Feminism absolutely has a place in dumb summer movies. And yeah, those moments that, Charlize Theron takes the gun from Tom Hardy because she's a better shot. I also took it as he was drained of blood and accordingly shaky. But yeah, those are awesome little feminist moments. But you can't call something a feminist movie that is based on the assumption that in the apocalypse, men are going to turn into raging assholes and rape women. It's just not a guarantee. We live in a time where men are speaking out against rape and rape myth. And I mean, what blew up the whole Bill Cosby thing? Another comedian saying in his stand-up, "You rape women, Bill Cosby. Don't talk down to us." A man did that, right? And, I don't like this feminism equated with, essentially misandry. And people say misandry doesn't exist. I'm sorry, thinking all men are secret rapists if they could get away with it, when even the smallest of studies have said only a third at the most are like that. What does that say to the other 2/3? You don't count. Guess what? In the apocalypse, you'll be weak and be subjugated to the rapey McRapersons, who are the strongest among you. Male strength means you a closet rapist. No, I don't agree with that. And that's not feminism. That is a perpetuation of rape myth that continues to keep women afraid of men. And it undermines our confidence, and it stops us from speaking in public environments, and it stops us from being ambitious and fearless and all this stuff. And we have to stop that because it's holding us back. So, to conclude, Mad Max, very enjoyable movie. Very stupid movie. Feminist elements, but claiming it is on the whole a feminist film, even though the people that made it claim that can be their intent all they want. But, on the core, it's not by third wave feminism standards. And some say we're even out of third wave and into fourth wave now. But by second wave, yeah, I'd say by second wave, which is fair because it's, a remake of a series from the 80s. So if that's their paradigm, fabulous, good for them. I just want to give people the sense that no, modern feminism is not about assuming men are rapists, that we're beyond that, thank God, in some fingers of it, in some, sections of the movement now. And that's the thing I think people really, 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 really need to understand about feminism. Feminism never said a thing. The same way, the civil rights movement never said a thing. Various leaders of the civil rights movement said things. Various individuals participating in race-related civil rights have said things. And Mad Max got a lot of criticism for, not having enough people of color in the film. And this is something Hollywood is still struggling with. You have that token non-white character, and that's it, we're done. Pat on the back. Good for us, and that's not right. That's not right, and that's a conversation for another time. But, this sense that feminism thinks anything, it doesn't. And I don't make these videos and I don't give these critiques because, I'm trying to save feminism. Feminism doesn't need saving. And I think that the type of feminism that people are exposed to on the internet, especially involving like science fiction and fantasy stuff, I think people are getting a very warped perception of what feminism is. The feminism I grew up with and the feminism that I, learned my craft through was the feminism of teaching teen mothers life skills and advocating for the right for all girls around the world to get education and to be able to read and achieve and hold jobs and be able to drive and, show their faces in public if that's what they choose to do, and show their hair if that's what they choose to do. And a lot of people believe that Islam is the only religion that discourages that. It's not true. And so, we get in this intersectional tangle of things where you do have to be very careful about the assumptions you make. And, that's where Solidarity is for White Women came from. And I thought that was a beautiful message, as hostile as it became at times. I thought it was important to, I don't know if you heard me say, if women want to wear the hijab, awesome. If they don't, it should be their choice. And that's the whole point of feminism. And feminism does not mean making men the enemy, because feminism is also about saying, dismantling this concept of oppressive conventional masculinity. And people don't like talking about that. But the reality is that, men are subjected to gender norms that are just as oppressive. And, case in point, you have all these skinny white guys that are basically disposable cancer dudes. And then you've got this tough, main character who's more conventionally masculine. One of the things I love about video games is that, and this goes back to Tolkien, quite frankly. Tolkien can be credited for a lot of this as well. He's, in Frodo Baggins and Bilbo Baggins, he created a different kind of male lead. And that's very important, But I mean, the thing a lot of people don't realize about Tolkien is he created those male leads informed by his Christianity. And so people who just blanket attack Christianity as being an inherently evil force, well, Christianity gives us this pacifist, kind, benevolent male role model that people manage to contort and twist for their various personal bigotries as well. But that's why I believe, analysis, which is what I do, is as important as activism, which is those people who go out and march and sign petitions and scream at video game developers and say they won't buy their game unless there's female playable characters. I think that analysis is just as important as activism, because before you pick a direction and go out and march, you have to know the most productive direction to march. And when you're mobilizing and you're dealing with large groups of people, you don't have the opportunity for nuance. The analysis is where that nuance comes in. And I really think we need to be able to have these examinations and weigh the pros and cons and have these discussions with respect and without fear, because it's amazing to me how many of these feminists, yay, Mad Max, you'll see it here. I hadn't planned on seeing Mad Max Fury Road. It's like these women are apologizing for seeing the movie at all. I had to say, it's violent. No, it's not my thing at all. I'm here to say this is my thing. I love these movies, and I don't need them to be the vagina monologues with carsplosions. If somebody decides to make the vagina monologues with carsplosions, awesome. But I don't have any issue with movies that explore the masculine space, as long as they don't perpetuate, unentertaining myths. I won't even say dangerous, because they're not. It's a movie. I go to these movies to be entertained. I don't go to a summer movie to think real hard. I go to a summer movie to entertain. Pacific Rim, amazing. Giant robots punching giant monsters in the face. Good. Done. Jurassic Park got a thumbs up for me for that dinosaur fight at the end. That's all I care about. That's mostly what I remember about the movie. I don't need more to enjoy a film. I just need it to not feel like it's so lazy that it's seeing my money as worth less than a male moviegoer's. And there are plenty of men who also don't like some of the stuff. Like, my husband didn't want to see this movie because it didn't seem like it was for him. And at the end, we came out laughing because it was so stupid. So hopefully, and I did a lot of caveats at the end because I have to be so careful, because people look for the most negative way to interpret my words, and that sucks too, because that doesn't get us anywhere. I think we need to start having better assumptions about each other. But I hope this sort of gives some people a different perspective, maybe makes some people feel, oh, okay, I'm not wrong, or I'm not an idiot for feeling that it wasn't a feminist movie or it wasn't feminist, whatever, right? I just think that rational discussion that doesn't go to extremes is, always good. And I could talk for a lot more on this, but I've already talked for half an hour. So I'm going to stop now. Hopefully it's been some food for thought. And car explosions.